In our application so far, we created a controller, and then we created a little service that we injected into the controller to reply us with the input that was received from the REST API. We want to now access the database that we created in previous videos to basically get this film data and to perform a search. So we're going to search partially with some kind of string, and we're going to get all the titles that match that string from the database. So to start doing this, first we need to configure the database. We need to, my first stop is going to be here in the main class, because we added this exclusion here because then we didn't have a database before, so Spring Boot was complaining because it didn't find a configuration. But now we're going to create that configuration, so we don't need this exclusion, so we can remove this. Then we are going to create a data source configuration, which is going to allow the app to connect to the local running application, the local running database. So the database is running here, and we want to connect to this database. So we're going to create this package, and we're going to call it config. In the config package, I'm going to create maybe repositories config, and here are going to be all our data source or persistence related configurations. It will be just the data source for now. So we're going to annotate this with configuration, and we're going to create a bin, and this bin is going to be returning us the data source. So get data source. The type data source. So return data source builder, create. We're gonna need multiple things. We're gonna need a driver name. We're going to need a URL. We're going to need a username. We're going to need a password, and then we're going to build. So let's find this data. So for the driver, we're connecting to Postgres. So the driver is called like this: org.postgresql.driver. The URL is a JDBC URL. It starts with JDBC, Java Database Connectivity, and then PostgreSQL, and now the address where the database is located. In our case, is the local machine. So localhost and the port 5432. And what was the name of the database? dvdrental. Was dvdrental. Now the username was username. The password was password. So this is how we connect to the database using this bin. if we were to boot the app, it will not complain anymore like it did before, because the data source would be connected. The next thing we need to do is to create a representation of the data we want to have, but as an object. So we're going to get data from this table film, but we don't want all the data. We just want maybe a title and maybe a release year, so that we can process this in such way in the service that, I don't know, gives us a nice output. This is the title and this was the year of filming, of release, sorry. Let's do that. So another package, which I'm gonna call it repositories. Some people call this package data because it's the data layer. I also like that, but anyway, I just call this repositories. And I'm going to create an entity called film. So this entity is going to require in its constructor a title, which is going to be of type string, and is going to require a release year, we said, which I think in the database is of type, is a numeric, so it's of the type int. We need to add some annotations. We need to add JPA annotations. So we need to add an entity annotation, and also because we cannot have an entity without a primary key, we need to also add the primary key, and it's going to be film ID, and the primary key is of type long. Let's make it long just in case. But so what I do here when I'm doing these mappings, I just extend this a little bit, and this one is going to be the ID, and it's going to now that I have the ID, it stopped complaining. We're gonna have, it's also going to be a column, and these ones are just going to be normal columns. But just like this is not enough. Sometimes we need, we need to explicitly, we want to explicitly map it in case. So automatically it will transform the camel case into underscore. But if we don't have to name the variables like this, we can name them whatever we want. But if we do so, we probably would need to do something like this. Name equal film ID, etc. So this would be required if we wanted to have a different namings for the variables. But yeah, just for illustrative purposes, I'm going to keep it. And these end brackets are not needed, so we can remove them. So we have now our entity. This is the representation of this data. Release year, film ID, and the title. Now let's create, we could put this in an entities sub-package, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to create now the repository itself. So this is the class that is going to act as the persistence layer. So in Kotlin, we can also use the repository annotation from Spring. But we need to tell that this is a type of repository, it's a JPA repository. So for JPA to work, we need to implement this interface, JPA repository. And we have to pass two things. So, the type of which is the table that this repository is going to interact with, which is going to be film, and also an ID type, so it's going to be long, and I'm going to now create the function. So function search. So now see, now that I have implemented the JPA repository, JPA has this intelligent way of naming the methods. So we are going to search by title, we say, right? So search by, so search by, and we could do title. See, it suggests us because it knows title, and then we can say like, so that the title has some similarity to whatever we pass in the input. And that thing that we pass in the input, that thing, I mean this parameter, is going to be title, type string, and in the return, as return, we're going to keep it, okay, we're gonna keep it simple as a list of a string, and I'm gonna explain why. When we return data from a repository, sometimes we need to have a special converter which will automatically convert to this. But this is not going to work just out of the box without this converter, because this comes from a Spring framework which is implemented in Java, and in Kotlin it struggles interpreting some nullable values. So additional work would be needed with a converter if we wanted to have this kind of return type. It's possible, but it's out of the scope for this video. So for now, I'm going to return a string, and now we're going to do the query to the database. So we want to select, I like putting first the star, so that when I do from and then I do film F, then I can go back and say I want title and I want release year. And we said that it's not just going to be from film F, we want also to add a clause where F title is like, and now we can use a pattern here, so that is going to contain the title, so like this. Okay, so this will be our query. Some problem here. So I made a little mistake. I remember that when we create these repositories need to be declared as interfaces. So this should be an interface and not a class. So this is how we create the repository. Now we can inject this repository into our service layer and we can use it. So let's go back to our service, and in here, in the constructor, we are going to do this film repository So now we can use it. So just to recap, so we created an entity which I actually realized that it can happen, let's say, if we don't know if there are some data in the database that maybe doesn't contain the title or the release year is not added. This could cause a problem if a null is passed. I forgot, I just realized now that I opened this class. So we're going to make this optional with the question mark. So yeah, we created the film entity, then also we had a configuration for the data source, and we created a repository and then we did a SQL query. So back to the service. So instead of this, we're gonna now use that repository. So film repository search by, and we're gonna pass the input. We're gonna search by this input, and I was thinking to return something like this, like 0 or 1, and then title and year, something like this, and we would have multiple. So to do something like that, so just so that we can do some kind of processing here in the service side, on the service, because that's the purpose of the service layer, to do complex business logic. But yeah, this is just a demo app. So let's do that. So I'm going to say map index. So because I want those numbers, and index, and now the record that is coming from the database. So because this is going to return us some record, and because this record is going to come as a string. Oh, sorry, I should have used the lambda. So yeah, index and record, and we are going to maybe create some values. It's going to be a record. Now, let's see how it looks like for now, just like this. So let's run the application and see how it looks like for now, and then we're going to do further implementation. So we're going to run the app. We're going to go to the browser. We're going to try what we had. It's not giving us any result because, I don't know, this doesn't exist in the database, but maybe this exists in the database. So, okay, this one is just one entry in the database with this match. So it's working well, and we can see how it comes back from the database like this. It's comma separated. So we need to process this a little bit further, just so that looks like this. So we are going to do maybe a split. Of course, this kind of processing is very simplistic, and maybe if we really want to do this, it wouldn't live here, it would live in the data layer or on that converter that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, because this is a demo app, so I'm going to do it in here so that we have at least some kind of logic in the service layer. So a split, so we're going to split on the comma, and then maybe like this, and then the string, we're going to return a string. Yeah, so index, so the index, we said we want the index, and then we want the title. So so if the variable is just directly like this, we can leave it without any curly braces. But if we want to go into the record and get the title, or actually, sorry, not into the record, into the values. So I would have to create a so we will get the first this first value, because we need to split. I forgot to assign it to a values variable. I thought I did. And so this would get us the title, and now we need another one for the year. So which year is the next one. So yeah, let's see this how it looks like. So of course this is just a demonstration. There could be an array index out of bounds, but yeah, this is just a demo, so it's just so that we can see how the database actually works with the app. So now see, now it's formatted differently. Everything is prefixed, and it has the year when it was produced. So that's it. So that's how it's possible to connect the Kotlin microservice with the Spring to a Postgres database using the JPA /Hibernate library. There are other frameworks, for example, Juke, but for this example I did with Hibernate because it's very standard. Pretty much everybody uses it. So that's it.